Hello, what's up, guys? And today I'll be reading for you this whole book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's an audiobook, and welcome. Rich Dad Poor Dad. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and the middle class do not. Robert G. Kiyosaki, number one personal financial book of all time seller. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a starting point for anyone looking to gain control of their financial future. USA Today. Rich Dad Poor Dad. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and the middle class do not. By Robert T. Kiyosaki. If you purchase this book without a cover or PDF, JPG, or retrieve copy of this book, it is likely stolen property or a counterfeit. In that case, neither the authors, the publisher, or any employees or agents are received has received any payment of the copy. Furthermore, counterfeiting is a known avenue of financial support for organized crime and terrorist groups. We urge you to please not purchase any such copy and to report any instance of someone selling such copies to Platter Publishing LLC. This publication is designed to provide competent and reliable information regarding the subject matter covered. However, it is sold with the understanding that the author and publisher are not engaged in rendering legal, financial, or other professional advice. Laws and practices often vary from state to state and country to country, and if legal or expert assistance is required, the services of professionals should be sought. The author and the publisher specifically disclaim any liability that is incurred from the use of application of the contents of this book. Copyright 2011 by Cashflow Technologies Inc. All rights reserved except as permitted under the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, or stored in that database or retrieval system without the prior written permission of the publisher. Published by Platter Publishing LLC, Cashflow Rich Dad Advisors ESB. Anyway, I know you guys don't give a shit about this, so I'll proceed. Rich Dad Poor Dad. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and the middle class do not. By Robert T. Kiyosaki. Let's proceed. Best-selling book of Robert Kiyosaki. There is Rich Dad Poor Dad. There is Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. Rich Dad's Rich Kid, Smart Kid. Rich Dad's Desire, Retire Young, Retire Rich. Rich Dad's Prophecy. Rich Dad's Success Story. Rich Dad's Guide to Become Rich Without Cutting Up Your Credit Cards. Rich Dad's Who Took My Money. Rich Dad Poor Dad for Teens. Escape the Rat Race. Rich Dads Before You Quit Your Job. Rich Dads Increase Your Financial IQ. Robert Kiyosaki's Conspiracy of the Rich, Unfair Advantage, Why A Students Work for C Students. Nice, perfect. 2. Parents everywhere, a child's first and the most important teachers, and to all those who educate, influence, and lead by example. Perfect. Acknowledgement. How does a person say thank you when there are so many people to thank? Obviously, this book is a thank you to my two fathers who were powerful role models, and to my mom who taught me love and kindness. The person most responsible for this book becoming a reality is my wife, Kim, my partner in marriage, business, and in life. She takes my life complete. She makes my life complete. Sorry. Alright, for the contents Introduction, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Chapter 1. Lesson 1 The Rich Don't Work for Money. Chapter 2. Lesson 2 Why Teach Financial Literacy. Chapter 3. Lesson 3 Mind Your Own Business. Chapter 4. Lesson 4 History of Taxes and Power of Corporations. Chapter 5. Lesson 5 The Rich Invent Money. Chapter 6. Lesson 6 Work to Learn. Don't Work for Money. Chapter 7 Overcoming Obstacles. Chapter 8 Getting Started. Chapter 9 Still Want More? Here are some to-dos. Nice. Final thoughts. Though I'm missing final thoughts, I guess this book is a replica. So, introduction. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. One was highly educated and intelligent. He had PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. He then went to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his advanced studies, all on full financial scholarship. The other father never finished the 8th grade. Both men are successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial incomes, yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men in Hawaii. One died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The other left bills to be paid. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in education, but did not recommend the same course of study. If I had only one dad, I would have had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of the rich man and one of a poor man. Instead of simply accepting or rejecting one or the other, I found myself thinking more, comparing, and then choosing for myself. The problem was that the rich man was not rich yet, and the poor man was not yet poor. Both were just starting out on their careers, and both were struggling with money and families. But they had very different point of views of money. For example, one dad would say, the love of money is the root of all evil. The other said, the lack of money is the root of all evil. As a young lad, as a young boy, having two strong fathers both influencing me for difficult was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, but the two fathers did not say the same. Let's proceed. Things. The contrasting in their points of view, particularly about money, was so extreme that I grew curious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long periods of time about what each was saying. Much of my private time was spent reflecting, asking myself questions such as, why does he say that? And then asking the same questions of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, yeah, he's right. I agreed with that, or to simply reject the point of view by saying the old man doesn't know what he's talking about. Instead of having two dads whom I loved forced me to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned on to be much more vulnerable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single point of view. One of the reasons the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home and not in school. Most of us learn about money from parents. So, what can poor parents tell their children about money? They simply say, stay in school and study hard. The child may graduate with excellent grades, but with poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. Schools focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains how smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earned excellent grades may struggle financially all over their lives. Let me repeat this. This explains how smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earned excellent grades may struggle financially all of their lives. Man, this is a bar. Our staggering national debt is due to the large but highly educated politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little or no training in the subject of money. Today, I often wonder what will soon happen when we have billions of people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? How will national service how will a national service if teaching children about money continues to be left to parents, most of whom will be or already are poor? Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained value, insight into the power and effects of one's thoughts on one's life. For example, one dad had a habit of saying, I can't afford it. The other dad forbade those words to be used. He insisted I asked, how can I afford it? One is a statement and another is a question. One lets you off the hook, the other forces you to think. The soon My soon to be rich dad will explain that by automatically saying the words, I can't afford it. Your brain stops working. By asking the question, how can I afford it? Your brain is put to work. He did not mean that you should buy everything you want. He was fanatical about exercising your mind, the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say, my brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I can make. He believed that automatically saying I can't afford it was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that one dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, and the other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long-term results was the one that grew stronger financially and the other grew weaker. It is not much different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on regular basis versus someone who sits on the couch watching television. The proper mental exercise increases your chances of health, and proper mental exercises increases your chances of wealth. So it's a chance of health and wealth. My dad, my two dads had opposing attitudes, and that affected the way they thought. One dad thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of those less fortunate. The other said taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce. One dad recommended studying hard so you can find a good company to work for. The other recommended study hard so you can find a good company to buy. One dad said, the reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids. The other dad said, the reason I must be rich is because I have you kids. Let me repeat this part. One dad said, the reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids. The other said, the reason I must be rich is because I have you kids. That's about fantastic. One encouraged talking about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal. So relatable. One said, when it comes to money, play it safe. Don't take risk. The other said, learn to manage risk. One believed over One believed our home is our largest investment and greatest asset. The other believed my house is a liability, and if your house is the largest investment, you are in trouble. Both dads paid the bills on time. One paid his bills first, while the other pays his bills last. One dad believed in a company or a government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about pay raises, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed with two of these uncles who joined the military, earned a retirement and entitled package for life after 20 years of active service. He loved the idea of medical benefits and PX privileges the military provided its retirees. He also loved the tenure system available available through the university. The idea of the job protection for life and job benefits seemed more important at times than the job. He would often say, I've worked hard for the government and I am entitled to these benefits. The other believed in total financial self-reliance. He spoke out against the entitlements mentality, and how it created weak and financial needy people. He was emphatic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars, the other created investments. One dad taught me how to read an impressive resume so I could find a good job. The other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so I would create jobs. Being a product of two strong dads allowed me to luxury allowed me the luxury of observing effects different the effects different thoughts have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their own lives through their thoughts. For example, my poor dad always said, I'll never be rich. I will repeat this again. For example, my poor dad always said, I'll never be rich. And that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always offered to himself as rich. He would say things like, I'm a rich man. The rich people don't do this. Even when he has a flat broke after a major financial setback, he continued to refer himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by saying, there is a difference between the poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, but poor is eternal. My poor dad would say, I'm not interested in money, or money doesn't matter. My rich dad always said, money is power. Money is power. The power of your thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that it was important to be aware of thoughts and how I expressed myself. I noticed that my poor dad was poor, not because the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts and actions. As a young boy, having two fathers, I became actually acutely aware of this about being careful about which thoughts I choose to adopt as my own. Should I listen to my rich dad or my poor dad? Right. There is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporarily, poor is eternal. There's a bar right there. Although both men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed about what they thought was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree and a grade, and get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study to become a professional, an attorney, or an accountant, to go to business school for my MBA. The other encouraged me to study to be rich, to understand how money works, to learn how to have it work for me. I don't work for money. Words he would repeat over and over. Money works for me. At the age of 9, I decided to listen to and learn from my rich dad about money. In doing so, I chose not to listen to my poor dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees. A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems. My favorite is Roads, The Roads Not Taken. I use its lesson almost daily. Let me read it. The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down when as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other, as yes as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same, and both had mourning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden back black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall tell this with sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And that has made all the difference. Over the years, I I have often reflected upon Robert Frost's poems, choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad's advice and attitude about money was a painful decision, but it was a decision that shaped the rest of my life. Once I made up my mind about whom to listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 years until I was 39 years old. He stopped once I realized that I knew and fully understand what he had been trying to drum into my often thick skull. Money is one form of power, but what is more powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money works, you gain power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works. So they spend their lives working for money. Because I was only 9 years old when I started, the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple. And when it was all said done, there were only six main lessons repeated over 30 years. This book is about those six lessons put as simply as possible, just as simply as my rich dad put forth those lessons to me. The lessons were meant not to be answers, but guideposts that will assist you and your children to grow wealthier no matter what happens in a world of increasing change and uncertainty. Whew. All right, it's 30 minutes past, and we're officially beginning chapter 1. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because Today, Jimmy's mom drove up in the new Cadillac, and we're going to their beach house for the weekend. He took three of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did, I replied in a hard tone. My dad silently shook his head and pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose and went back to reading the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. It was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar plantation town. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people such as doctors, business owners and bankers sent their children to this elementary school. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school with kids and from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go to public, intermediate, and high school. There was no private school for them or for me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly. If you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling. Even then, I knew that really meant that's all I'm going to tell you. Or I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed. The next morning, I told my best friend, Mike, what my dad said as best as I could tell. Mike and I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was also in this school by a twist of fate. Someone had thrown a joke in the line for school district, and we wound up in school with rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bicycles, and new everything. Mom and dad provided us basics like food, shelter, clothes, but that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things, but there was not much work available for 9 years old boys. So what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I said, but do you want to be my partner? He agreed. And so that Saturday morning, my Mike became my first business partner. We spent all the morning coming up with ideas on how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about all the cool guys at Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but the heart was good because it inspired us to keep thinking of way to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning struck, and it was an idea Mike got from a science book he had read. Excitedly, we shook hands, and the partnership now had a business. For the next several weeks, Dad and I ran around our neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking our neighbors if they will have their toothpaste tubes for us. With dazzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some of us want some of us what we were doing, to which we um what wait, I'm lost, sorry. Um mm, alright. We For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around our neighborhoods knocking on the doors and asking our neighbors if they had saved their toothpaste tubes for us. The puzzle looks most adults consented with smile. Some of us, eh? Some asked us what we were doing, to which we replied, "We can't tell you, it's just a business secret." My mom grew distressed as the weeks wore on. He had selected a site next to our washing machine as the place we would stockpile our raw materials in a brown cardboard box that at one time held catsup, bottles. Our little pile of used toothpaste tubes began to grow. Finally, my mom put his foot down the side of neighbor's messy, crumpled. His toothpaste tubes had gotten to yeah. "What are you boys doing?" she asked. "And I don't want to hear again what it's a business secret. Something with this mess, or I'm going to throw it out." Mike and I pledged and begged, explaining that we would soon have enough and then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to finish the toothpaste so we could have the tubes. Mom granted us 1 week extension. The date of the date to begin production was moved and the pressure was on. My first partnership was already being threatened with an eviction notice by my own mom. It became Mike's job to tell the neighbors to work to quickly use up their toothpaste, saying the dentist wanted them to brush more often anyway. I began to put together the production line. One day, my dad drove up with a friend to see who 9-year-old boys in the driveway with a production line operating at a full speed. There was fine white powder everywhere. On a long table there were small milk cartons from school, and our family's hibachi grill was glowing with red hot coals at maximum heat. Chad walked up cautiously, having to park the car at the base of the driveway since the production line blocked the carport. As he and his friend got closer, they saw steel pots sitting on top of the coals in which the toothpaste tubes were being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in plastic tubes. The tubes were made of lead, so once the painting was burned off, the tubes were dropped in the small steel pots. They melted until they became liquid, and with Mom's pot holders, we poured and let through a small hole on top of milk cartons. The milk cartons were filled with the plaster of Paris. White powder was everywhere. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over. The entire area looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk cartons were the outer containers for plaster of the Paris moths. My dad and his friends watched as we carefully poured the molten lead, the molten lead through a small hole in the top of the plaster of the Paris cube. Careful, my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the steel pot down and smiled at my dad. "What are you boys doing?" he asked with a cautious smile. "We're doing what you told me to do." "We were going to be rich," I said. "Yep," said Mike, grinning and nodding his head. "We're partners, we're partners." "And what's in those plaster molds?" my dad asked. "Wash," I said. "This should be a good batch." With a small hammer, I tapped at the seal that divided the cube in half. Cautiously, I pulled up the top of the half of the plaster mold and a lead nickel fell out. "Oh no!" my dad exclaimed. "You're casting out nickels of lead." "That's right," Mike said. "We're doing so as we're doing as you told us to do. We're making money." My dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head, along with the fire and box of spent toothpaste tubes. In front of him were two little boys covered in white dust, smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and seated them in front on the front step of our house. With a smile, he gently explained the word counterfeiting meant. Our dreams were dashed. "You mean this is illegal?" asked Mike in a quavering voice. "Let them go," my dad's friend said. "They might be developing a natural talent." My dad glared at him. "Yes, it is illegal," my dad said gently. "But you boys have shown great creativity and original thoughts. Keep doing, keep going. I'm really proud of you." Disappointed, Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up our mess. The business was over on opening day. Sweeping the border up, I looked at Mike and said, "I guess Jimmy and his friends are really poor, right? We are poor." My father was just leaving as I said that. "Boys," he said, "you're only poor if you give up. Most important thing is that you did something. Most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. I'm very proud of you, the two of you. I will say it again. Keep going. Don't quit." Mike and I stood there in silence. They were nice words, but we still did not know what to do. "So how come you're not rich, Dad?" "Dad?" I asked. "Because I chose to be a school teacher. School teachers really don't think about being rich. We just like to teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money." Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. "I know," said my dad. "If you boys want to learn how how to be rich, don't ask me. Talk to your dad, Mike." "My dad?" asked Mike with a scrunched up face. Yeah, your dad repeated my repeated my dad with a smile. Your dad and I have the same banker. He raves about your father. He told me several times your father is brilliant when it comes to making money. My dad? Mike asked again in disbelief. Then this is funny. Then how come we don't have a nice car, a nice house, like the rich kid at school? A nice car, a nice house don't necessarily means you're rich or you know how to make money. My dad replied. Jimmy's dad works for the sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar the sugar company is in financial trouble. Jimmy's dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire. I sus I suspect in a few years he'll be a very rich man. With what Mike and I got ex with that, Mike and I got excited again. With major vigor, we began cleaning up the mess caused by our now defunct, defunct first business. As we were cleaning, we made plans for how and when to talk to Mike's dad. The problem was that Mike's dad worked for long hours and often did not come until did not come home until late. His father owned warehouses, a construction company, a chain of stores, a three res- and restaurants. It is the restaurants that keep him out late. Mike told the boss Mike called the boss after he had finished cleaning up. He was going to talk to his dad when he got home that night and ask him if he would teach us how to become rich. Mike promised to call as soon as he had talked to his dad, even if it was late. The phone rang at 8:30 p.m. Okay, I said. Next Saturday, I put the phone down. My dad had agreed to meet with us on Saturday. I caught the 7:30 a.m. bus to poor side of the town. The lessons begin. Mike and I met with his dad that morning at 8 o'clock. He was already busy. Having been at work for more than an hour, he his construction supervisor was just leaving his pickup truck as he walked up his simple, small, and tidy home. Mike met me at the door. My dad's on the phone. He said to wait on the back porch. Mike said as he opened the door. The old wooden floor cracked as he stepped across the threshold of the aging house. There was a cheap mat just inside the door. The mat was there to hide the years of wear from countless tapes that the floor had supported, although cleaning aids needed to be replaced. I felt claustrophobic as I entered the narrow living room that was filled with all messy, overstuffed furniture that today would be collector's items. Sitting on the couch were two women, both a little older than my mom. Across from the women sat a man in a workman's clothes. He wore khaki slacks and khaki shorts, neatly pressed but without scratch, and polished work boots. He was about 10 years older than my dad. They smiled as Mike and I worked, but then passed them toward the back porch. I smiled back shyly. Who were these people? I asked. Oh, they work for my dad. The older man runs his warehouses, and are the women are the managers of the restaurants. As you arrived, you saw the construction supervisor who is working for the road project about 50 miles from here. His other supervisor, who is building a track of houses, left before you got here. Does this go on all the time? I asked. Not always, but quite often, said Mike, smiling as he pulled up his chair to sit down next to me. I asked my dad if he would teach us to make money. Dad said, oh, and what did he say to that? I asked with cautious curiosity. Well, he had a funny look on his face at first, and then he said he would make us an offer. Oh, I said, rocking up my chair back against the wall. I sat there perched on two rear legs of the chair. Mike said the same thing. Do you know what the offer is? I asked. No, but we'll soon find out. Suddenly, Mike's dad burst through the rickety screen door, and onto the porch. Mike and I jumped to our feet, not out of respect, but because we were startled. Ready, boys? He asked, as he pulled up the chair to sit down with us. We nodded our heads as we pulled our chairs away from the wall to sit in front of him. He was a big man, about 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. My dad was taller, about the same weight, 5 years older than Mike's dad. They sort of looked alike, though not the same ethnic makeup. Maybe their energy was similar. Mike said, you want to learn to make money? Is that correct, Robert? I nodded my head quickly, but with this little trepidation had a lot of power behind his words and smile. Okay, here's my offer. I'll teach you, but I want to eat classroom style. Work for me, I'll teach you. You don't work for me, I won't teach you. I can teach you faster if you work, and if and I'm wasting my time if you just want to sit and listen like you do in school. This is my offer. Take it or leave it. Ah, may I ask a question first? I asked. No, take it or leave it. I've got too much work to do to waste my time. If you can't make up, if if all right, if you can't make up your mind decisively, then you should never learn to make money anyway. Opportunities come and go, and being able to know when to make a quick decision is an important skill. Being able to know when to make a quick decision is an important skill. You have the opportunity that you asked for. School is beginning, or it's over in 10 seconds. Mike started said with a teasing smile. Take it, I said. Take it, said Mike. Good, said Mike starts. Miss Martin will be by in 10 minutes. After I am through with her, you ride with her to my separate, and you can begin working. I'll pay you 10 cents an hour, and you work for 3 hours every Saturday. But I have a softball game today, I say. Mike's dad had lowered his voice to a stern tone. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it, he said. I'll take it, I replied, choosing to work and learn instead of playing. Alright guys, it's been an hour. It's been an hour reading this. Next time we'll proceed from the 30 cents later. That's the next article we're gonna be reading. I've got to hit the gym. Right now it's 3 a.m. It's 9 a.m. right now, so we'll meet you later. Thank you for listening. Um, I'm reading the book with me for an hour. Meet you guys tomorrow for the next 1 hour continuation of reading this book until we're done with it. So far, ladies and gentlemen, we have covered 23 pages, and that's a hell of a step forward. I wish you nothing but the best. Have a good day. Bye.